Welcome to Grey Primer, a show that's mostly about miniatures. My name is Nick and I'm your host. Earlier this year, Games Workshop released the Leviathan launch box for the 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000, and it contains a whole bunch of space marines and space bugs. Now, anytime a cool new box is launched, I try to imagine how I'm going to turn this thing into a diorama. And this time I'm going back to my favorite Warhammer novel of all time, Guy Haley's Devastation of Baal. I want to be careful not to spoil anything, but by the end of the Devastation of Baal, Dante's a little worse for wear. And while it's not been written about yet, not that I'm aware of anyway, we know that Dante undergoes the Rubicon procedure. He becomes a Primaris Space Marine, a next generation Space Marine, and that recovers him to his previous vitality, even though he's a significantly chunkier boy afterwards. And we also know that when Mephiston, the chief librarian of the Blood Angels, went through the same process, the same Rubicon thing, he was aware and thinking mad thoughts and floating around the room and all sorts of stuff. What would Dante dream of as he crosses the Rubicon? He'd probably dream of a bunch of Blood Angels getting attacked by space bugs. So Leviathan is the perfect fit, and that's what the diorama is going to be. It's Dante's Rubicon dream of Baal. Let's go. The Leviathan box is pretty special, and you get a serious amount of stuff for your money. I mean, look at all this plastic. I had to write it on 2 pages. That's how much you get. Fairly decent decal sheet too, with a nice enough spread of Space Marine chapters and iconography. Incredibly useful. And the book is a thing of beauty. With over 300 pages of lore, there's tons of photos of painted minis, and of course the 10th edition rules. It's a colossus, and this is an exclusive edition for this launch box. And no Dante diorama is complete without a Dante, of course, and this is a beautiful updated version of the miniature. Dante is the chapter master of the Blood Angels, and is one of my favorite characters in Warhammer. Now, I like to start dioramas with a bit of research, and in these books I was able to find some just amazing images of Blood Angels Successor chapters. Now, some of these weren't able to make it to Baal, some weren't invited, and some just plain didn't show up, but in Dante's Rubicon Fever Dream, I like them to make an appearance. And here you see the first sketch of the concept, with a besieged Dante surrounded by brothers making his final stand. And a little shout out for the budget, if a little fragile, Green Stuff World paint mixer. Here I'm making detailed paint references for each miniature, as well as color palettes and layouts, and I'll refer to these throughout the build process and painting process, just to keep me on track. And it's especially important when you're dealing with a whole bunch of different chapters. It's very easy to forget which color goes where. And I mean, look at all these things. Flesh Terrors, we've got Yellow Lamenters, we've got, I think, the Teal Atlantean Spears, the Black and Red Angels Sanguine, and the Chrome Knights of Blood. But let's start by talking about how the Tyranids were painted. I use a very old pot of Citadel bone from 1989 for the skin of all of the Tyranids, and I shade this with AK Interactive's Invocation Purple Deep Shade. And I highlight the skin with AK Interactive's Intense White. Give that a quick dry brush there. And Vallejo's Hexed Lichen goes onto all of the armor plates on the Tyranids. And I use AK Interactive's Intense Black for all of the cloves and hooves, and I think some spikes here and there too. Bugman's Glow is perfect for those pointy little tongues. And Vallejo's Warlord Purple, thinned with Express Color Medium, shades the biomechanical weapons like the one you see here. The utterly incredible Super Chrome from AK is perfect for mirror finished teeth. And here we're getting our first glance at the terrifying Screamer Killer. I use Citadel Contrast Ayandan Yellow for the eyes, and I give these a tiny little highlight with AK Intense Deep Yellow. I think it just works really well. Vallejo's Nocturna Fantasy Pro, I don't know what all that means, Highlight Skin is just perfect for highlighting the skin. And Citadel Color Contrast Sigvald Burgundy is one of my favorite colors, and it does a great job in this exposed brain. And to wrap up the Tyranids, I dry brush some Vallejo Cold Grey onto all of the armor plates. They're great models, and I love this Hivefleet Leviathan color scheme. Over to the Space Marines now, and I start with a Vallejo Express color Plasma Red for all of those red bits. And as these are Blood Angels and Blood Angels Successors, there are a lot of red bits. But the Flash Terrors are a little different, as they have a deeper metallic red. So what I do is I start with a base coat of Citadel's Lead Belcher, and that gives me that metallic undercoat, and then I top it off with some more of that Vallejo Plasma Red. And for the Atlantean Spear, I use AK Interactive Deep Shade Green Dark, and this color scheme is very similar to Sons of Horus, but maybe don't mention that to him. And Dante's armor plate, and he's mostly armor plate, it should be gold, but I actually prefer Vallejo's bright bronze to any of the gold tones that I own. Citadel's Lead Belcher is fantastic for undercoating weapons and some of the Aquillas like the one here in this Blood Angel. I get Vallejo's Hex Lycan out again to paint some of these little Tyranid bits and pieces that are on the Death Company base here. I guess he lost the pauldron somewhere along the way. AK Intense Black is used for weapon details too, and I love how matte this stuff dries. It's fantastic. Citadel Contrast Imperial Fist is put all over the Lamenter, and I used a white primer just to create more punch in that yellow. AK Interactive Buff is ideal for highlighting skull details in some of the Terminator pauldrons. It looks cool against the black here. My decals archive is almost as deep as my bits box, and there's all sorts here. I got Forge World Blood Angel sheet there. I got a whole bunch of different Space Marine ones from years gone by. There are some, there's an Orc one there for the checker pattern. We've got, that's a Baneblade. There's Green Stuff World checkers there. And yeah, right at the back, there is a Chaos sheet. Because look at those blood drops, look at those skulls. Those are going to come in useful. I detail each Marine's particular decal needs on this page, and it keeps me right through one of the more time-consuming parts of a project. But done right, I think it's also one of the most rewarding. And for the diorama base, I started with a 12-inch wide polystyrene disc. And because this is a diorama of a dream, I allowed myself some artistic license in the layout of the battlefield. I knew it didn't have to be too close to reality. So I added a little bit of geometry to it. There are some circles within circles. Dante and co will stand on a circular mound in the middle, and they'll have a ring around them, which is lower down and filled with blood, of course. Kind of like a gory moat. Beyond that will be another ring, and in that, of course, will have a whole bunch of Tyranids on it. And in my head, this just seemed like a visually dramatic layout. I used Das clay for Dante's mound, and while it adds a lot of weight to the base, and can sometimes be messy, it's just perfect here. I gray prime the whole thing and apply some AK Terrain asphalt over the entire upper surface. It's gross looking, it smells funky, but it does a great job. First though, I actually use frog tape around the edge. It protects it, it gives a nice clean line between what's going to be a matte black side to this, and then the asphalt on top. Asphalt does have a tendency to misbehave and jump around the place, so it's a good idea to protect surfaces you don't want to have it on. I wanted this to look like a battle-scorched wasteland, and the misbehaving, funky-smelling AK asphalt never disappoints. I'm using AK's Snow as the undercoat for my moat, and of course Citadel's Blood for the Blood God, for the blood in my moat. I'm yet to use AK's Snow as actual snow in anything, but it is very cool in this use case. Maybe not as cool as a moat full of blood, so let's have a look at that. Honestly, this took way more blood than I thought it would, and I ran out at the very last drop, but I had just enough to do what I needed to do here. It's glorious, or maybe even glorious? No, I'm sorry. I take that back. It is fantastic though. I popped all the minis off their temporary bases and used a tiny pin vise to drill holes in them, which in turn allows me to superglue in some florist's wire, and this gives much better adhesion when I'm attaching the miniatures to the diorama base. And this is nerve-wracking work, but I can use AK asphalt to hide any stray glue marks, and also to mask where the scenic bases on the minis connect with the diorama. But once the Tyranids are all added in here, I'm calling this one done. In a few moments I'll share the showcase reel with you, and thanks so much for spending some time with me today. I really hope you enjoyed the video and that you subscribe to see some more.